Okay, we are up. Hey, everybody. Um, we are here with Ryan. I'm just going to give everybody a couple minutes to make sure things are coming through okay and that you can hear us and you can see us. If anybody in the chat wants to say otherwise, you're welcome to. Cool. Awesome. I think we're good to go. We're here with Ryan today, Fords in the North from New York, and he's going to walk us through scaling your photography studio and adding on other brands and associate photographers. Ryan and his wife have gone from having just the two of them to having 10 photographers and two brands and really working all around the world. Ryan, I'm not going to do too much more intro. I'm going to let you take it away from there.
Sounds good, man. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. I guess I'll just kick it right off and share the presentation. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm super pumped to dive into this topic. It is a a very broad and all-encompassing topic to tackle, especially in just a short amount of time. But we're going to do our best to get through it, and obviously going to be doing some like questions and Q&A time afterwards. So yeah, feel free to, if I'm glancing over something too quickly, jump in. Yeah, I'll just kick it right off here. So I'm going to sort of break this talk down into the who, what, where, how, when, why of scaling your photography company. This also applies to videographers. I'll probably just use the terms interchangeably. I might just refer to like shooters if it's like photo or video. But yeah, I'm just going to go through sort of all the logistics and nuts and bolts of how we got to where we are right now, and also just some sort of bigger picture, maybe ethical, more philosophical things to think about in terms of whether you want to scale your business. So just a quick like overview on us. Heidi and I, Heidi's my wife. We started in 2019, and that was when we did our first wedding together. We actually went to school for architecture before that, bought cameras, started shooting as like a hobby on the side, and quickly kind of just fell into random little jobs here and there. In 2010, a friend was getting married. This is probably a familiar story for a lot of you. A friend was getting married, and they asked us to shoot their wedding. That wedding led to another wedding, and so on and so forth. And so that's kind of just how we got our start. We never second shot for anyone. We were never part of a studio. We kind of just went in head first, and sort of haven't looked back since. From our very first wedding, both Heidi and I did both photo and video, so we kind of operated a little differently than maybe most either husband and wife teams or most photo video duos. It wasn't like one of us focused on photo and the other focused on video. We both really interchangeably did both. And I wouldn't say we did it on purpose. It was just sort of what we were being hired for. And we just kind of took these jobs as they came. And that was sort of slowly building this skill set. But it did help us later on. We're going to dive into building out a team of photo shooters and video shooters. We currently have 5 people on our Forge in the North team. That's our main studio. And we also have 5 people for our sister company, After It All. And I'll get into the differences of all those things. We also have an admin person that handles a lot of the emailing and things like that. We'll also get into that. Since 2019, just sort of like more in the last few years here, we book around 150 to 200 weddings between both studios. And we are based in the New York City area, although we have shot kind of all over the place. Definitely New York City is our home, and we book the vast majority of our work in the New York City area. So I'm going to start with the why on this first. This is a really important one to think about, because just as important as why you should do that is also why you should maybe not do this. you have to be very careful when jumping into this because it might not be for you. You don't want to waste time and energy pursuing a route that, maybe doesn't work or you just end up not liking. So it's good to just like before you maybe scale up, take a step back and just really make sure this is what you want to do and kind of come up with a game plan. So just a few of the reasons as to why you might want to do it. One, right off the bat, this is an easy one. Obvious, you want to make more money. Probably doesn't need much of an explanation, but the more jobs you do, theoretically, the more money you should be making. You have another reason why you might do it is you have too many inquiries, and you don't want to turn away clients. So you have just like there's too many people asking to hire you, and you just physically can't do that many jobs. Three, maybe you have an interest in building a team. So if it's just like aside from like a creative pursuit, maybe you just have like this business aspiration to build out a team of shooters or to start something new or take a risk and try to scale up in some way. Four, you maybe think about your job security, and by that I mean the longevity of yourself being in this career, getting more inquiries later on in maybe 5 years, 10 years down the road. And we'll kind of get into, again, more of these things as we go on. And lastly, maybe you want more passive income. And I use that in quotes. And again, I'll address this later, but maybe you want more passive income in your business, and you again want to increase the longevity in this career. Maybe you want it to last longer, and you're just feeling like burnt out. Maybe you want to scale back your own weddings, that kind of thing. So just diving into the why not. There are a lot of reasons. These are just a few that kind of the top five for me, I would say. You open yourself up to a lot more liability and a lot more risk. This can come in the form of, studio shooters maybe not performing to what your standards are and clients being disappointed. It could be, as simple as maybe a studio shooter missing a client call or a client appointment, and that's starting to reflect poorly on your brand or on your image. Or there's an issue with delivery and the shooters are not hitting deadlines or not, doing sort of like basic shooting and editing logistics that could potentially damage your brand and your reputation in the industry. Another one, this is just hard and it's a lot of work. This is probably something I'm going to touch on a few times on this talk. I don't want anyone here to get the idea that having studio shooters be a part of their company is going to somehow make their lives easier or just have the ability to do less work overall. Your work tends to shift, and that's kind of skipping down to number 4 there, where a lot of your focus turns more to the business side of things rather than creative pursuits. So at least for us, what we found is that when we started to scale up slowly, it just meant more and more work. And there was things we learned along the way that helped us get that work done more efficiently. But it is scaling your business and adding shooters to your team is not really a way to take a back seat. I don't believe it's possible to start a studio and just really be hands off, just hire all the right people, have it all go perfectly, and you just kind of play puppet master and you only work, an hour a day or whatever. I don't really think that's possible in this industry. If someone's cracked that, I would love to know. But I think those models tend to fail somewhat quickly. It might be possible in a very short term time frame, but I just don't think that it's a realistic long term solution. And the sort of I skipped right over it. Third thing, you are responsible for other people. We'll get into this later, but everyone on our team, they are independent contractors, so they are not full employees, but we still feel a tremendous amount of responsibility for every single person on our team. If we're not booking them enough work, or they're not getting the right kind of jobs, or it doesn't line up with their ambitions or their sort of just life path. There's a lot of responsibility on our shoulders to help them and get them into the right jobs and get them kind of have their goals align with ours. And it's something you don't really think about when you're shooting solo. It's like all about you. And so you're just in full, you're in full control, and you're sort of the pilot of your own, destiny. And that's great. But once you add shooters to your team and they're really leaning on you to get them work, to be paid, all those things, it really just sort of weighs on you in a different way. And then just the last thing, client experience can be weakened. And I say can be because it's not necessarily the case all the time. But just the more you start shifting away from just doing your own weddings and giving your clients all your attention, now you have so many more clients to deal with. So like Heidi and I, in a busy year, we'll shoot 40 weddings, the two of us. Our studio is now doing 200 weddings. So that's 5 times the amount of clients that we have to have conversations with, that I have to get on the phone with and answer questions. I have to make them feel like they are our only client. And that just becomes very difficult as you scale up. So the client experience can be weakened. So something to consider. I wanted to talk about when to start a studio or start thinking about expanding to associate shooters, other team members, studio shooters. I'm going to kind of use these terms a little interchangeably. I think the branding of how you say each what these other people are on your team is sort of a personal choice or a brand identity choice. Studio shooters, team shooters, associates. Those are all things that I think can be used just depending on what angle you're kind of coming at. But anyway, just in terms of when we did all this stuff. Again, 2010, shot our first wedding. By year 3, and at this point we were called Ryan and Heidi Studio, just an amazingly unique and creative name, right? Ryan and Heidi Studio. And we had enough inquiries that we could kind of we were kind of starting to think about adding other shooters. And so we basically just asked friends that had been shooting with us, friends that we knew that had their own companies, hey, would you want to kind of come on our team and maybe take a few jobs through our studio every now and then? And they all did that. We had 4 other people come in. They didn't shoot a lot of jobs. I would say maybe each person had 5 to 10 jobs for a year and a half while we kind of ran this studio experiment. But the challenge was, and the reason that we eventually disbanded the studio was everyone had their own businesses, and we all kind of decided that, hey, if we're going to do this, we all really have to like abandon our businesses and come together and do this fully outright. Because now we're starting to kind of compete. Like, what if we're trying to book Joe on a job, but then they reach out to Joe's company on the side, and now it's very confusing for people. So we basically disbanded the studio at that point, deciding that, hey, it's just best that we all stay friends. It was a fun time, like no hard feelings. It ended great. But it didn't make sense for these particular 4 people that we had involved at that point. And so Heidi and I then kind of took a step back and had a chance to kind of really think about what we wanted long term. And we learned a lot from how that Ryan and Heidi studio experiment failed, I guess you could say. So we decided that one thing that was important to us was to get our names off of the company name. I don't think this is a requirement, but for us, we wanted to build a team of people that were sort of on the same level as us, not necessarily people who were regarded as like more associate or lower tier shooters than us. And so we thought we really need to get our names off of it because we want people approaching our studio as just, oh, here's a team of people and they all do great work. And for many years, our pricing was all the same. And that was just an important sort of aspect for us moving forward. So we rebranded to Forge in the North in this is 2015, year 5. And we added 2 shooters at that point, 1 photo, 1 video. So there's sort of like 4 of us, 2 teams, 2 photo and video teams. And so that was really nice for a few years where it was just like very straightforward. It was like Heidi and I could take some photo video jobs, and then Paul and Ben took some photo and video jobs. And we kind of cruised on that from like 2015 all the way up through 2019. When the work really started to become more than we could handle. There was just so many inquiries coming in. And this is sort of ties into when you should be thinking of, like, the most important factor in deciding when to start a studio is the ability to generate enough inquiries and leads that is just way more than you can keep up with. Or to put it another way, when your supply falls way short of the demand. So kind of just going back here to 2015, we expanded from 2 shooters to 4 shooters. At that point, we were booking 35 to 40 weddings per year. That was Heidi and I. We were shooting about 35 to 40 weddings per year. At that point, we were getting 300 to 400 inquiries per year. So we were leaving like a lot on the table. Now, perhaps a lot of those inquiries we were too expensive for, or maybe they wanted to go in another direction, or we were booked on the date already. So that's why we expanded the team at that point. In 2019, sort of a similar thing was happening. Between the 4 of us, we were booking 70 to 90 weddings per year, and we were getting 700 to 800 inquiries per year. So again, about a 10x variable there. So, call it 70, we were booked 70 weddings, but getting 700 inquiries. We were just leaving a lot on the table. And the 2 biggest factors as to why we weren't booking more was just availability. We just didn't have enough dates in our calendar to book, and pricing. We may have been too expensive for people. Sometimes maybe a client would decide they didn't like our style, but typically by the time they've inquired with us, they've already kind of decided, hey, we may be interested in this person shooting our wedding. They like our work enough. And I would say that goes for pretty much most photographers. So we decided, let's start another studio that solves those 2 problems. It has extra shooters on the team, so that covers the availability problem, and it's at a lower price point, which would cover the pricing problem that we were too expensive. So that's how After It All was born. It was just very simple. We wanted to solve those 2 problems, so we started a group of photo and video shooters at a lower price point. We sort of describe them as up-and-comers in the industry. They don't have as much experience as the Forge in the North team, so couples can kind of get these After It All shooters while they're still affordable, and that turned out to be very appealing to a lot of couples. We booked up the After It All jobs like they were just like, it went crazy in 2019. We were kind of surprised how fast people were willing to move from, okay, Forge in the North can't do the job for either they're booked or they're too expensive, to booking an After It All shooter. So we'll dive quickly into the differences between the 2 studios. Let me just make sure everything's looking good here. Okay. So with Forge in the North, we are getting leads through many different avenues: planners, past clients, Instagram, vendor listings. Fewer vendor listings now. It was sort of more earlier on in our career. And what I mean by vendor listings, I mean on like wedding websites, 100 Layer Cake, Green Wedding Shoes. They usually have vendor directories. Publications, like getting weddings featured. Venue recommendations, other photographers referring us. So those are all the ways that Forge in the North was getting clients at that point. Actually, that is how we're getting them now. Our pricing starts at 5,200. Average packages, people are booking about 7 to 8K. The workflow, and we're going to dive more into more detail on the workflow later. The shooter is responsible for pre-wedding discussions with the client. So this is like hopping on the phone to like talk about timeline, logistics for like shooting locations, stuff like that. They obviously are responsible to shoot the wedding, and then they also edit the wedding. So with Forge in the North, each shooter on our team is sort of an individual artist that you hire, and you are with them basically from start to finish. The studio side of it, so Kate, our admin person, and myself, we would sort of handle other logistical things, insurance, if there was like a contract question, something needed to be added to the invoice, things like that. So we would handle all of those things. Again, we're going to go into a bit more detail on this later on. And then for paying the shooters on the Forge in the North side, it's the total booking minus a $1,200 cut, which is what we take. So the point to that is we thought that because the shooter is doing all the work, essentially, of the wedding shooting and the editing, that they deserve the rewards from that, which is like added on hours, or if there's extra edits, things like that. We just didn't feel that clicking a button and adding it to the invoice was enough of a value that we would take more of a cut for that. So the Forge in the North shooters are making more money with these add-ons. Conversely, After It All is a little different. I'll just start, because we ended with the shooter payout, I'll start on that side of it. Because the After It All shooters are not doing the editing, so Heidi and I handle all the editing. The After It All shooters are only doing the shooting. They're getting kind of just paid a shooting rate, which ends up being about $1,500 plus. That's like a base rate for like a base package with After It All, and then they get roughly 75% of the add-ons. And I say roughly 75% because we actually have different kind of like a pricing structure based on different things that the clients can add, and it's a little complicated, but it roughly breaks down to they're getting about 75% of every add-on that the client makes. Those packages start at $3,600. Average package is like $4,000 to $5,000. And really the only way that we get clients, at least when we started, was kind of funneled from Forge in the North. So people would inquire Forge in the North side. They would ask us for, they'd say, oh, you're too expensive, or if we're already booked, we would then lead them to say, oh, hey, we actually have a sister company, After It All. There are a bunch of shooters over there, and here's their portfolios, here's their pricing. So that's how we initially got the bookings with After It All. It was just the leftover inquiries from Forge in the North. Now that we're about 4 or 5 years in, it's really cool to see that like past clients are referring to After It All Studio. A lot of planners know about it now, so they'll just go straight to After It All versus going to Forge in the North if their client has a certain budget. So it's been really cool to see how kind of that studio has taken on a new life of like getting new leads and inquiries coming in. So kind of brushed on some of this already. Just real quick, putting it on a page here. Our obligation as the studio is generating the inquiries, all the marketing, advertising, business development, website, social media, contracts, payments. A lot of times we'll do an initial call with the couples to sort of try to answer as many questions as we can up front before they talk to the shooter. We're trying to kind of minimize as many, I don't want to say like false leads, but we don't really want our team getting on the phone with couples unless they're really serious about booking them. So we don't want to bother them with all the kind of minutia of different questions and things like that. Those are things that Kate and myself can handle. We of course do business liability insurance. We handle all the editing just for the After It All studio, and then we do all of the client delivery. So this is the galleries, the albums, digital downloads, things like that. Again, shooter obligation, initial like meeting of the couple before they book, and then all the pre-wedding coordination, the actual shooting. For After It All, they would deliver the files to us, And for Forge in the North, they would just handle the editing straight through and upload it straight to a gallery where then we would send it to the client. Um, okay, so sorry, I'm probably trying to breeze through this talk very quickly, but there's a lot to cover. I don't exactly know how long this talk will be, but I'm definitely hoping we can have some good Q&A time at the end. Okay, so the how we go about scaling the company. And I wanted to start this section off with three paradigms that are good to think about when determining how you're going to approach starting a studio. The first one is just, kind of touched on this earlier, passive income. And I'm going to use the word passive loosely. On the extreme end of the scale, passive really truly does mean no work at all. So, you put your money in the stock market, maybe the stock you buy pays you a dividend. That would be the most passive form of income. But generally speaking, when you're thinking about starting your studio, you really have to realize that the less passive you want to be, the more money you're going to make. And the more passive you want that income to be, the less money you're going to make. And so in terms of how our studios function, Forged in the North, because our shooters are more experienced and also because they are handling the editing, which is obviously a very big part of anyone's workload, we view that as sort of a more passive income stream. And therefore, we are making actually less money on those jobs, even though the bookings are at a higher price. After it all, because we're now handling all the editing, it's obviously much less passive. We're having to do a tremendous amount of work to finish those jobs. And also, we are a little bit more involved in the upfront conversations. I tend to be kind of getting on the phone with couples, chiming in on emails a little bit more to kind of, I don't know, maybe impart some experience I've had on that particular venue or area that they're shooting. So we tend to be just a little bit more involved in the jobs on the After It All side. Whereas on the Forge in the North shooters, they're all very, very experienced, and they've been at this for a long time. And so we're just a bit more hands off with the Forge in the North shooters. Another paradigm, paying your shooters. This one is really tricky. There's the general idea here is that the lower you want to pay your shooter, the higher chance is that you're going to have turnover. And what I mean by turnover is just that the studio shooter or associate may not want to stay with you. And so maybe it's another career path. Maybe they want to start their own business. Maybe they're just, whatever the case, they go back to school. You're not going to retain your shooters if you're not paying them enough. And conversely, the higher you pay them, the more likely it is that they're going to stay with you. So we obviously have the two studios set up very differently. Forge in the North, the shooters are making the bulk of their income through the Forge in the North bookings. So aside from COVID, for the past 4 or 5 years, all the Forge in the North shooters make 6 figures. It's their full-time job. They supplement with other things, but I think the proof there is that we've had Paul and Ben for 9 years. We've added some people to the team since then, but we've had Paul and Ben for 9 years, and they're, I think, very quite happy with the setup and doing these jobs, and so we've never had any risk of them wanting to leave or anything like that. On the After It All side, it's always been pitched from the very beginning to all those shooters that, hey, this is supplemental income. This is not going to be your full-time income. This is going to be sort of moonlighting, weekend money. And so the types of shooters that we have on that team have been like people who are in grad school and looking for money to make on their weekends just to pay their bills throughout grad school. people who have other types of photography endeavors. Like one of our shooters does a lot of commercial editorial type work, just wants to do some weddings on the side. They don't want to run a business. They don't want to deal with the editing. So After It All is a really great fit for them. And other shooters we've had also is just like they're getting their start. They don't actually have a great way of generating a lot of leads up front. So After It All can be a great start for them and an opportunity to sort of like build their portfolio. The last paradigm I just want to quickly talk about was like thinking short-term goals versus long-term goals. And this is something that we did early on. I don't think it was any kind of, stroke of genius. It was just sort of what we thought at the time. And I think we got lucky and made a bet that, hey, if we reinvest as much as we can into the business, that's going to pay its dividends later on, and we're going to be able to build something much bigger. And so we weren't as concerned with profitability. And I say profitability loosely. I don't mean like in the tech sense that we're actually like negative profit or anything like that, but in the sense that we're not concerned with maximizing our own earnings. We were concerned with building a company that could be well established in sort of years to come. So with the Forge in the North and After It All studios, we kind of consider those high reinvestment studios. And I'll go through on the next slide of how we reinvest. But Forge in the North being sort of the most extreme case of that. Our After It All studio, also we reinvest quite a bit into that studio, but not quite as much as Forge in the North. And then Ryan and Heidi's studio, which was our first studio effort, which failed. We basically put no effort into investing into that company. It was just sort of like, hey, we had this extra inquiry, let's book it with this person. And so there wasn't really a lot of thought of like longevity or anything like that. And so, you can sort of, I guess, deduce from at least our experience that, investing in your studios early on can really reap rewards in sort of the years to come and create some longevity with the business that you're building. These are 8 ways that we have reinvested into our studio. So I'll just kind of quickly go through these. One is hiring a studio manager. So this is Kate, who I mentioned. She's now handling all of the admin and logistics and contracts and invoicing and things like that. And that really helps free up Heidi and I to be doing other things like editing the After It All jobs or running other parts of the studio. Heidi and I also do a lot of commercial work, so there's times where we get pulled on other types of jobs. So that's one way we've really reinvested in our studio. The second is to take no commission or at least a lower commission. So for instance, early on with Forge in the North, instead of taking a cut, the cut back then was lower. I think it was 800 or 1,000. And for certain jobs that would come in, if there was a client where it was just right on the line of their budget, I could offer that client, hey, let me knock the price down $1,000 for you if you want to book Paul. And if I felt like that was a good wedding for him to get, that's the kind of thing I would do. And that meant I would make, or I say I, that we, the studio, would really not make any money on that. There would be no commission. He would still get paid the same, so it makes no difference to the shooter. And now he has an opportunity to shoot this job that could be added into his portfolio. So that is a really useful tool. And we've used that over the years, much more so in the beginning than we do now. That everyone's much more established. But early on, we certainly took a lot of liberties with cutting our own commission and not making any money on the job just to build up that shooter's portfolio. 3, pay for styled shoots. We did a little bit of this early on, just to, again, build a portfolio, hire some, stylist and hair and makeup and a couple and go out there and shoot an engagement session, for instance, and get that up in the portfolio. Number 4, don't pitch yourself on jobs. So this one seems weird, but there'd be jobs that come in, and we do this a lot even to this day, where a job will come in, we're all open for the job. Heidi and I would like to shoot it, but for whatever reason, we decide it's better if Ben shoots it, or it's better if Paul shoots it. to help build their portfolios. Or maybe it's good to make a connection with the planner or to have experience at a certain venue. So we will actually we will tell couples that we are not available on certain dates if we feel like it's a better job for that studio shooter. Five, buy them gear. It's pretty straightforward. If you feel like they're missing wide angle shots on the dance floor, buy them a wide angle lens. Don't think about it, but that's just do it right there. Like if maybe they can't afford it, they're not ready. We've done this over the years where it's just like, hey, you need a new camera, let me help you with that. Here's $1,000 towards a new camera body. Six, planners. So something we've done over the years is send planners that we work with frequently, like gifts and little packages and treats and different things like that. Just a way to say thank you to them for booking us. But that's just a way where we're taking some of that money we're making from the studio jobs and just again reinvesting it right back into the business. Seven, bonuses. So end of year bonuses for the shooters. That's pretty straightforward. That's just going to be a case-by-case basis, and however much you think you can afford to give or want to give. It depends on maybe one of your shooters did a lot of sort of extra free work without asking for compensation. That might be worthy of a bonus. And then lastly, ads and vendor listings. This is probably something that we've done the least of, and I'm not saying it doesn't work, but for us, we've just never done paid advertisement. The most we've ever done is a few vendor listings on like wedding blogs. Again, this is something that we could talk a little bit more in the Q&A, but it's somewhere where you could reinvest into for building a studio. Okay, so we're running a little short on time. I think I'm quickly approaching my 45 minutes, but we're going to try to bang through this pretty quick. Some nuts and bolts on the how. Okay. Workflow. For the Forged in the North shooter, again, just in the beginning, so I'm kind of highlighting here those different touch points all the way from inquiry to delivery. The Forged in the North shooter, they're going to get on, and the After It All shooter, they're going to get on an initial call maybe for meeting the couple before they sign the contract. And then they're going to sort of be not involved for a little while and then get brought back in for timeline discussion, some of the pre-wedding planning. This will happen in the last few months right before the wedding. They're obviously shooting the wedding. And then for the Forged in the North shooter, they're editing. The After It All shooter is done pretty much after they're done shooting. They're delivering the files to us. And then just the bottom track there of what the studio is doing, pretty straightforward. Obviously, we've talked about this, but we're handling the initial inquiry, the questions, invoice, contract, insurance, all that sort of stuff. Let's see. So with contracts, our contracts stay between the company, us, our studio, and the client. It's not signed by the studio shooter. It's signed by me, the owner of the company, and the couple. The studio shooter who is doing that particular wedding is listed on the contract, so they are actually assigned contractually, but assigned to the job contractually, but they're not in any way involved in the actual contract. All their work for all studio shooters is considered work for hire, and so the copyright stays with the company, not the shooter. You can make a contract or an agreement with your shooters, but I say be careful, because the more you start to dictate rules and code of conduct and ways that they have to work, the closer they become to an employee versus an independent contractor. And so we're strictly paying everyone on our team as independent contractors, so they're not getting like health insurance benefits, or they wouldn't get unemployment if they decided to leave or weren't getting work for whatever reason. So the more you sort of dictate their time and dictate the way they do their job, the more it kind of shifts into the employee realm of things. So from a sort of legal and tax point of view, we don't do contracts or agreements with any of our shooters. there's sort of an initial email with our After It All shooters of like what's kind of their duties are, just telling them, hey, you're not doing editing, you have to bring your own gear, that kind of stuff. But there's no official signing of anything, and it's with us really an honor system. And I know that kind of sounds crazy, but we're going to talk to this point at the end about who you end up hiring for your studio. But that's how we do it. And again, we can maybe dive into some like Q&A on that. I'll just kind of quickly go through this because I think we're right at the end. Some other systems we have in place for our CRM, which handles contracts, payments, invoices, client forms, questionnaires, all that kind of project logistic related things. We use a great platform called Bloom, and it's handled all of our needs great. One really nice thing you can kind of see right in the screen grab here of the software is like there's a big task board right on the main page that helps us very quickly track where all the projects are at. 'Cause again, dealing with like 200 weddings a year, what that really means is we have well over 200 jobs at any one time that we're tracking, because many of those jobs are from like the last year, or maybe they're booked 2 years out. So there's just a lot of jobs going on. It's really nice to be able to quickly see things in this way. So yeah, Bloom, check it out. For scheduling, we just use shared Google calendars. So very straightforward. Each shooter has their own calendar that is shared in both directions. So they can edit the calendar, we can edit their calendar. This helps us see when their blackout dates are. It helps us obviously tell them when weddings are, tell them when phone calls are with clients, things like that. So just very straightforward, a shared Google calendar individually with each shooter. And then lastly, for payment, we use Gusto. This is just like a payroll platform. So you can run actual payroll if you're running like an S Corp. You can also pay independent contractors, second shooters, all that stuff. It's super affordable. It's like, I don't know, maybe it ends up being like $50 per contractor per year. So for us, very minimal amount compared to the sort of scale we're doing. And then it generates all their like 1099s at the end of the year automatically and stuff like that. So great platform. I probably have some like sign up links that I should be sharing to some of this stuff for like affiliate links. So maybe we can like drop those in an email or something. Again, just these are kind of honorable mentions of the systems we use. Gallery provider PicTime. For video, we use a combination of Vimeo and WeTransfer. Website is Narrative and Squarespace. Editing, we're currently dabbling in some Imagine AI editing. We've gone through different editors over the years and tried different things. Albums, we're using Smart Albums, and email, we're just using like a Gmail business suite option for that. Okay, last thing, we're on the who to hire. So a few questions that you should ask before you decide who you're going to hire. Will this job be the majority of their income, or will it just be supplemental to their income? Kind of a straightforward thing, but you have to decide like how much are they going to be leaning on you for work, and that might dictate how you structure their involvement in the company. Will they be handling the editing, or will you? Do they have aspirations to run a business or continue to run a business? Like maybe they're just trying to fill their calendar. Or are they fully on your team, like on the Forge in the North model? And do you have flexibility who comes on your team? So what I mean by that is maybe you don't know exactly, or you're not strict on those first few questions. You might be able to adapt to the person. Maybe you just know someone who's a great shooter who might be a good fit, but you're open to whether they do the editing or whether you do the editing, things like that. I think that can be a very like good situation to be in, because then you're going to just open up the doors to more possible studio shooters being on your team. Ways to find shooters. Okay, so lots of different ways to find shooters. These are 5 ways that we've done it through second shooters who've worked with you, other photographers looking to not run a business anymore, Three, put out a job posting. We literally did this with After It All to find a couple of our After It All shooters. We just like posted a job posting, put it on our social media, put it in Facebook groups, got a ton of applicants. It was great. Word of mouth. And then lastly, mentor sessions. We do sort of private one-on-one mentor sessions for people. And that's actually the way we met Paul, who was very much just like first starting out back in 2013, 2014. And then he actually started, he was like a founding member of Forge in the North along with Ben. So the last thing I'll just say on this point, this is a photo of the whole crew, both studios combined, is, work with people who you would want to hang out with yourself. You are asking your couples to be with this person on their most important day of their life. Okay, so if you don't want to hang out with them and they annoy you in some way, they're probably, maybe not going to be a right fit for your company or for your personality or for your couples. So these are things to think about. It's like, just, are they good people? Are they good humans to be with? And like, we feel super, super lucky to have found the people that we have on our team, because we all are just like a big family. We love like hanging out, and just like everyone clicks really well. And so for us, it's just like really natural when I get on the phone with a couple and I'm like pitching someone on the team and they have questions about them. I can really just speak from a place of like honesty and just say, hey, this person is amazing. Like, you are going to love being with them on the day. Yeah, their work is great. Okay, good. But how about their personality? Who are they, And so it's like, that for me is just a huge variable into who you end up bringing on your team. And if you're getting sort of bad vibes with people, maybe you're considering someone, but there's just something that's not connecting. Maybe it's a good idea to just step back and not actually bring that person on. And so, yeah, anyway, I guess I'll just leave it at that. I think I've gone by my time. But yeah, thank you for listening to me ramble on that forever. And I guess we can like kind of jump into some Q&A if that works.
Yeah, that works great, man. That was so fantastic. Thank you, Ryan, for all that really dense information. I do have a bunch of Q&As. There were so many or
Okay.
questions that came through. There was a ton here.
Yeah.
So,
I realized halfway
um,
through how fast I had to actually talk to get through to get through it all. But I didn't. I tried to cover as much as I could. So hopefully people have some good questions of things that I glanced over, or just maybe I can dive into more detail on.
yeah, let me grab a couple here. So Rochelle was asking, almost all the people interested in being a shooter for me are ones who own businesses or own businesses or struggling. So I feel like I'm providing free education, experience, and insider knowledge, and they're just using me as a stepping stone. Hard when you're trying to build a team and you invest time and money into training.
Yeah.
There's not a question mark in there, but I think there is.
No, I get it. My general take on that is that they're not a good fit for what you're trying to do, probably. Now, it depends. Kind of going back to what I was saying about like short-term goals versus long-term goals. If you have long-term goals with your studio, and this is something you want to build for years to come, those types of people are not a good fit, because they're just looking to fill dates in their calendar, make a few extra bucks real quick. They really have no interest in helping your brand or your studio or being a part of a team. So just generally speaking, for us and the way we run our two studios, it's not a great fit for what we're doing. However, there could be an instance where that works. Maybe you're not interested in building a big studio, but for whatever reason, you just have a year where you need to bring on people. It could be COVID. COVID just happened. Everyone had a surge after it was dead for a year. Maybe you just need someone to help with rescheduling real quick, but they don't have to be on the team full time. That could be an instance where those people are useful. Maybe there's some family planning. Maybe you're going to have a child or something like that, right? Like Heidi and I had to deal with this. We have 3 kids now. We had to work out the schedules and figure out how we were going to kind of find other people on our team to help me shoot the weddings when Heidi couldn't, stuff like that. So those could be good short-term reasons to bring people in like that. But generally, people who just want to use you to build up their own portfolio and leave right away and stuff like that, that's just not going to work out. It's not going to work out for anyone. I saw just a question that's related to this in the chat, which is like, do we let the shooters use it in their own portfolios? For After It All, it's kind of a case by case basis, but if it's an After It All job and they are also shooting in the same market, like the same New York City market, they don't have permission to use those photos. Those are After It All photos. Like, we use those to market. It would be weird if they're also showing it in their portfolio and competing against us. We've had some shooters move like to the West Coast. We've had 2 shooters move to the West Coast, so they are not on the After It All team anymore. And what we told them is, hey, just give it a little time. I think we said like anything before 1 year from now. Anything older than a year. A year ago, you could use in your portfolio, and that means like within a year they'll be able to show everything. We're not competing with them anymore. We want to help them still. I don't see any downside to letting them use those images that they shot. So I guess it's sort of a case by case thing with that.
Mimi asked, did you consider raising prices instead of bringing on associates?
Yes, that's a great question. I thought about adding that into the presentation, and just that's a whole nother line of thought. But when we had all those extra inquiries with Forge in the North, we did raise our prices, but we were concerned about raising them too much for a couple of reasons. One, we did not want to price ourselves out of what we deem to be like our kind of main client types. So we don't really go after like a luxury wedding market. We're still sort of shooting. I don't even know what you call our market, honestly. So I have no idea what it's called, but it's just not really luxury. We do a few luxury events every year, but it's not our bread and butter. The main reason that we didn't go all in on raising the prices is because there's just fewer and fewer jobs as you go up in price. You're just narrowing your market down more and more and more. For some people, that's more appealing than building out a team. So it could be a potential path instead of building out the team. That's a great reason not to build a studio, is if that's the direction you want to go in. For us, we wanted to capture more of a market. So that actually meant going the other direction of starting a studio that's lower price than Forge in the North, which the starting price of the After It All packages are like the vast majority of budgets for weddings in New York City. So now we're like competing, we're very competitive at that price point now with so many shooters who have far less experience than Forge in the North, but that's how the couple originally found us. So we're sort of using the Forge in the North reputation to say, hey, look, we have this lower price studio. Believe us, like, we're doing the editing. We believe in these people. They shoot with us all the time. They're awesome. And so that's gone a really long way into getting those bookings.
I'm sure this kind of daisy chains on your market control, but I'm going to throw a new question that came in from Travis. What are your thoughts on having one brand, but have an exclusive option and a team options? I tried to start a separate brand for teams, but found it was a lot to manage and sometimes confusing for brides if we wanted to downsell them to the associate team brand.
Yeah. This is, it's tricky. I don't know if I understand exactly what that question means, but I think I can at least talk a little bit about one portion of it. One of the reasons we did not want Forge in the North to have different pricing. So as I mentioned early on, and for basically the first 6 years of Forge in the North, we all had one pricing sheet, and it didn't matter who you hired in the studio, it's all the same price. One reason for that was simplicity. So like not confusing brides, which is what Travis is saying is happening to him. So it is confusing to have all these pricing sheets and this person does this, here's their portfolio, here's this pricing. It is kind of a lot. It's much easier to just say, here's our pricing, here's the people. Whose portfolio do you like? And the other reason was we never wanted people on our Forge in the North team to feel lesser than Heidi and I. Initially, Paul and Ben did have less experience than Heidi and I. They quickly caught up, though. And so for us, we just wanted the pitch to be, hey, we are all great, experienced shooters, ready to go. Here's our pricing. It just was a sort of a more of a simplicity of like the pitch. If that makes sense. Travis, if I didn't fully understand the whole question there, feel free to follow up, but hopefully that helps.
And I want to make sure I dive into some earlier questions here that were coming in. How are you marketing to get over 700 inquiries from McKenna?
So early on, we, it took a long time to get to that point. Again, it really comes down to reinvesting in your business. From 2010 through 2016, so the first 6 years, Heidi and I we did not make that much money at all. I think we probably tried to report our taxes down as low as we could because we just spent so much on gear and traveling to wedding jobs and taking a hit on pricing to go do this and build our portfolio. For a while, our brand was very, I guess, had a reputation for travel. We used to spend our winters in New Zealand, and we would shoot in all sorts of parts of the world and do a lot of destination work. I think between Heidi and I and Paul and Ben, we've done over 80 international weddings now. So it's quite high, and we kind of use that as part of our as sort of our pitch. We're like these worldwide photographers based in New York, and our New York couples really liked that, and so it kind of set us apart at the time. That was how we did it. I realize that's not necessarily a strategy for everyone. This is a whole topic that is like a whole nother talk on how to generate leads. But I would say now our main way is past clients, planners, venue listings. A lot of venues recommend our studio now. Again, all these little points I'm mentioning are like a whole nother 5-10 minute conversation, but those are some of the ways that we did it early on. I wish I could answer that quicker. It's a whole thing. So maybe that's another masterclass next year or something. I don't know.
John is asking, do you make your shooters have insurance, or does your company cover liability or workman's comp?
We don't cover workman's comp because we don't have employees. That's the legal defining factor, at least in the state of New York. I think this might be a per state issue, so I'm only speaking for New York here. But we do have business liability insurance that covers all of our studio shooters, anyone like working for our brand, basically. Because the contract is between us and the couple, we cover the insurance. Because the gear is owned by the shooter, their own like equipment insurance is covered by them, if that makes sense. So that's how we do it. I'd probably just recommend doing it that way. Like if you're doing the admin of the contracts, the invoice, the payments, you should kind of just be handling the insurance. You want to make sure that stuff gets done and not really leave that in the hands of the shooter.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm sure this is a really deep question, but we'll try to do quickly with you here. How do you look at saving your emergency fund for such a business, and what percentage of booking do you put back into savings from Grant?
That's a great question. So because we have a very high volume of jobs coming in and coming out, just to support payroll, it's not like a formal employee payroll, but just to support the jobs when checks come in and payments go out to shooters, we keep a pretty healthy cushion of money in our business account so that we can kind of handle that ebb and flow. And like our account will literally fluctuate like 30, 40, $50,000 in like a few days, just like up and down, up and down, up and down. So you have to have obviously enough money in there to handle that, which during COVID grew to a point where that really helped us cushion by either paying shooters ahead of time, paying them more up front. We also had some business savings on the side. I don't have a great answer on, hey, save this X amount per year. We always just basically everything we could possibly do save. For us, we were saving toward a house, which we're now in. We just moved into a house last year. So for many years for us, we were like kind of saving towards like a down payment on a house. We've also done like Roth IRAs and traditional IRAs and stuff like that. So I don't have a great quick answer on that, but basically we just save as much as we can and try to make the best judgment call on how much to reinvest in the business. And it really just changes year to year and even month to month how much we're kind of shifting our attention between like our own savings and reinvesting in the business. I don't have a great one size fits all answer to that.
And just to clarify, come in a couple times, clarifying, are any of the shooters full time besides yourself and Heidi? Is anyone
Yeah,
coming in as a
so
technically
everyone,
full time? Like, yeah.
yeah, everyone on the Forge in the North team is full time. We are the Forge in the North weddings for them and for Heidi and I are the vast majority of our income. That's our bread and butter. It's, um, Paul has a whole nother thing of like fine artwork and some commercial work. Uh, but we have two Bens doing video, Benjamin and a Bennett. Very confusing, but the Bens also do different types of work. One Ben does like some docu-style work. The other Ben does like social content, commercial kind of work. Um, Sometimes they spend the extra time that they don't have to deal with running a business just taking time off, doing like artist residencies, traveling, things like that. But Forge in the North is their main thing. They only shoot weddings under Forge in the North, nowhere else. It's like a full time thing. After it all is more supplemental income. So they're not making a full time income. This is more weekend or moonlighting money and things like that.
Cool. And then Grant's asking, they're full time but not employees. How does that work? Not criticizing, just a bit confused. I think people
Yeah,
might be complaining that if someone is full time, that must equal employee. If you could
yeah.
separate that
So
distinction legally.
So I do know some studios that run it by having their shooters as employees and they get salaries and they usually have like office hours for editing and things like that. Um, we've set it up in a way that we really feel that this is better for our shooters to have a lot of autonomy and the legal definition between the two, whether they are technically an employee or an independent contractor. There's a whole long list of it. I think the IRS puts this out. It is there's not a fine line. It's a big, thick gray line, and that's again why we don't do contracts with our shooters. There's no official code of conduct with our business. Um, Going back to the point, hire good people that you would want to hang out with yourself, that you trust. We trust all our shooters. I can't imagine sending a code of conduct to our Forge in the North shooters. One, it would be redundant, and two, it would imply some type of distrust that we have that they're not doing something. But those are some variables as to whether they are shooting on their own gear or company gear is a factor. Um, Whether we tell them when they have to edit or when they have to do things. Obviously, they show up to a wedding job, but outside of that, do they have autonomy over their time? So those are things that define whether it's an independent contractor or an employee. This is going to go. It kind of goes quickly above my head, but there's legal factors, there's tax factors there. But yeah, we've very much shifted into the side of independent contractors, not employees. It just works better for us. And I would say it's probably better
Uh,
for most people when they're first starting out. I will say not to like jump right into having an employee. There's a lot of strings attached to that.
being that you ran into, there's a couple questions that kind of come through here, and I'll kind of form it in my own way. But you had COVID, obviously, which was a downturn in everyone's market. And your ideal situation is that you're providing a full-time, consistent pay for these employees or these shooters of yours. When you have had a downturn, ideally, I'm assuming that after all, unfortunately, North hasn't had a down year otherwise in some optimistic sense. But when you have had that situation, or if you were to have that one again, what is that managed like to make sure that these people are consistently paid, or is there then
Yeah.
a tiered preference of who's gonna get the work?
It's a good question. it was a very hard time to figure a lot of that out and the rescheduling and all that kind of stuff. Um, Taking kind of a step back, thinking big picture about this, Heidi and I do a lot of work. I have conversations with every single person on our team, sometimes multiple times a year, kind of coaching them from a business standpoint of, hey, you're an independent shooter, you're doing photography, videography, whatever it is. These are the things you got to be thinking out because we're thinking back to when we first started, and I can impart some kind of wisdom on that. So things like not living outside of your means and making sure you have some savings, some cushion, so that when if things do go down, you have something to pull from. Um, all of the people on our team follow that basic advice. I'm not taking credit for it. It just happens to be who they are. We all had different ways that we could handle it. It's hard to say that there's like one solution I could tell you that's just going to work for everyone. It's just other than making sure you're having those conversations that they're prepared for a downturn, because if no bookings are coming in, there's just nothing we can do as a studio. There's not just like all this money that we're just going to give them out of nowhere. We can do some things like maybe instead of splitting their payments half and half, maybe doing the full payment up front when the booking comes in, stuff like that to help them if they need that. But other than that, there's not a whole lot you can do other than just their personal kind of own finances and being prepared as a individual independent contractor, being prepared for downturns. COVID taught us a lot, definitely. But yeah, it's I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if I have a perfect answer for that.
That's a tough one. I've got one more really easy question for you, and then just a follow up that we'll end with here. Neo is asking, how do your shooters transfer raw files? Are you guys using Dropbox or something else?
We use so for Forge in the North, there's no transferring. They're editing and uploading straight to PicTime. That's no problem. For our After It All shooters, the only thing that they're required to do after the wedding is to just do a quick renaming of the files and kind of organize them in Lightroom, just so that when we get the files from them, that it kind of makes sense. We're not having to like sort through what was going on that day. But they send us a Lightroom file and a Smart Previews file right away through WeTransfer, which is just like a very like streamlined, simple file transfer system, so that we can get started right away on editing. And then within a few months, we deliver within 3 months. So within 3 months, we get just like an SD card in the mail, and we just mail SD cards back and forth. And they have it backed up on their end, but it's just we could do downloads, but sometimes the files are getting really big, and it's just like it's slow for them. It's just easier to just pop it in the mail. In fact, I think we're just starting this year. It's going to be the first year where we're just going to like send each of our shooters like 20 prepaid envelopes like ready to go, so they're just dropping them and going. But yeah, for us, that's just the simplest way is to do the full raws on an SD card. We usually save up, like do a few weddings. So they like put like 1 month's worth of weddings on a shipment. And that way it's just like a little less work for them.
It's not a question in here, but I'm going to ask it. For your Forged in the North shooters that are doing the editing and pushing up to PicTime, are they managing their data backup individually, and you're certain, or you're confident within that, or are you then eventually grabbing original RAWs and final images and doing your own on-site data backup too?
Um, that's another one where I'm having individual conversations with each shooter, really making sure that they're doing the right things. And so they are responsible for that data backup initially. And the After All shooters too are as well. But again, getting that Lightroom catalog and Smart Previews file of everything right away is such an amazing peace of mind. Obviously, the Smart Previews files are not full res, but in a pinch, in a real dire situation, that's going to really save you. Um, but yeah, for the Forge and R shooters, like just individual conversations, making sure they're doing all the right things, everything's getting backed up. Of course, once the job's delivered within that 3 months, we're more or less off the hook. Like if something went wrong with the files, we'd be safe. But yeah, that's kind of just really managing. That's one of the many things you're just
Yeah.
constantly worried about, waking you up at night thinking about running a studio with this many people. It's just like, oh man, just like who's gonna lose a wedding by accident next? Like what's going on? Thankfully, we've had very few problems with that. But yeah, it is something you have to really stay on top of.
Yeah, the smart previews are absolutely good in a pinch. Like, can be used even for print, so that's a great fallback.
Yeah.
The last question I'll pitch to you here, just because it's gonna be a little more complicated, I bet. A couple people asked if you could clarify the shooter editor payout. They were a little confused by it. Maybe we can pull that slide back up and just run over that, and then wrap things up.
Shooter editor payout. Is there anything you can elaborate on that specifically, just so I can make sure I'm covering the right thing?
I think they wanted to say between the two brands of how if you had a shooter for Fortune North versus for After It All, what they were responsible for. I think this is the page that people were looking
Yeah.
for. And then
So
someone asked specifically for video, if you don't mind.
it's a great question on video. So again, Forge of the North, each shooter doing their own editing. They're editing the video. We stay involved in certain aspects of that, right? So like for video, I'm reviewing every edit that they send, making notes. They go back, polish it up, and then we deliver to client. That kind of thing. So there's still like touch points there. I'm breezing over a lot of details just because there's so many little things to get into. I don't want to get too granular. So yeah, so for video, that's what we do. For After It All, for the video shooters, they actually do the video editing. We are not currently doing the video editing for the After It All shooters, so their payment structure is different. Again, this was just a difference, a very minute difference that we were dealing with that I didn't think was important to the overall discussion. But yeah, we're involved in the editing to the extent of like providing feedback, ideas, things like that, talking with the client afterward about how they want the video to look and making sure that we're doing it right. With the photo, sorry, just going back to the question, they were just asking the payouts. The payouts are basically, just think of it this way, with Forge of the North, with like the more full-time shooters, the Forge of the North shooters make everything on that job minus a fixed cut that we take for booking. So they're making any kind of add-ons, engagement sessions, that kind of stuff. We do take the print sales. That's as a studio, we'll make the print sales, but we kind of factor that into bonuses anyway for everyone. So it eventually sort of kicks back and gets distributed out. With After It All, they're getting a fixed rate up front for the shooting, and we as a studio are making the rest of the money. So it's inversely sort of related. It's an inverse sort of relationship in terms of how people get paid, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think when people saw the shooter payout here, they saw, because a couple of these came in, that the payout for the shooter was $1,200 for shooting client discussion editing versus, if I'm understanding now, it's the $1,200 is the studio cut, and the
Yeah.
shooter is.
So
Yeah, there
that's
we
a
go.
that's a minus sign, and I'm realizing now that's incredibly confusing. Total package price minus $1,200 is what they make. Um,
There we go.
Whereas on
Yeah,
the After It All
I think
side,
that answered a bunch of
they
questions.
make 1,500 plus about 75% of the add-ons. So they're still making money as those packages get bigger, but it's like After All shooters are kind of starting from the ground up, whereas the Fortune North shooters are making everything just minus our cut. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that clarifies it quite a bit. There was some at the beginning that we were wondering, but
Yeah.
man, thank you so much, Ryan, today. This was really, really incredibly informative. Thanks everyone for all your questions. They were really, really helpful as well. We'll be sending an email out with some resources from Ryan as well as some links for the products he uses as well to help his business. And thanks so much, everyone.